Hello! Today we're going to look at simple interest, which is an important topic. And I'm just going to be really straight with you. I'm going to cheat here. I've made a simple interest video for a different course, and I'm going to use bits of that video. So you might not notice, but you probably will, that the video might just jump around a tiny bit. I think it'll be pretty smooth. But if things just look a little funny for a second or two, that's what's happening. I'm jumping from real, live Math 9 video to old, pre-recorded Workplace 11 video. Okay? So we'll see if you can spot it. In the meantime, let's start with what interest is. Interest is the fee charged by a bank when you borrow money from them, right? When you take out a loan. You go into the bank and you say, I need $10,000 because I want to buy a motorcycle. So they say, sure, we'll give you the $10,000. But here's the thing. When you pay us back the $10,000, you're also going to pay us back some extra. And that extra bit, that's called the interest. So it's bad, right? But wait a minute. Interest is also good. Because if you put money in the bank, in a savings account, then the money will actually pay you to keep your money in the savings account. So the money that they pay you is also called interest. Interest bad up here, interest good down here. So there's two types of basic interest. One's called simple interest and one's called compound interest. And this year I only have to teach you about simple interest. So what's simple interest? Simple interest is sometimes called regular interest, and it's paid once, generally at the end of the time period of the investment. And here's the formula for simple interest. It is I equals PRT. And there's no symbols between the P and the R and the T. So what does that mean? It means you're multiplying. Alright, so what do all these things stand for? Well, the I shouldn't be too bad. The I stands for interest, or simple interest. This is the simple interest formula. The compound interest formula is different. I'm just going to write interest today, but it's the simple interest formula. P. P stands for principal. What is the principal? Well, let's define it. The principal is the original amount of money invested or the original amount of money borrowed. So let's say you go to the bank and you put $10,000 in the bank, lucky you, then that amount of money is your principal. Or you go to the bank and you borrow $200,000 to buy a new house, then that amount of money is the principal. It's the original value, the present value, it's also called. Okay, R, what does that stand for? R stands for the rate, specifically the interest rate. So let's talk about that. This is the fee that's given or charged by the bank in 1 year. So it's how much they're going to give you if you put money in the bank, or how much they're going to charge you if you take out a loan. And it's always expressed as a percent. But here's the thing. When you use this formula, the I equals PRT formula, you have to use it as a decimal. You have to switch it to a decimal. So let's just take a second and talk about that. Let's say that they told you that the interest rate was 1.45%. That's, believe it or not a bad interest rate for a savings account. So if you were going to put it into the formula above, you would not put 1.45 in. You'd need to change it to a decimal. Now I know you're saying, but wait a minute, it already has a decimal. I know. You basically have to get rid of the percent. Do you know how to do that? Well, there's two ways to change a percent into a decimal. One way is you can divide it by 100. Why is that? Because percent means out of 100. So it's kind of like 1.45 out of 100. And look, 1.5 out of or over 100 means 1.45 divided by 100. So that's one thing you can do. And if you do that, you get 0.0145. The other way you can do it is, if you know how to divide by 100, dividing by 100 is the same as moving the decimal point 2 spots to the left. 1, 2. Wait a minute, there's no number here. Well, then you put a 0 in there. So you get 0.0145, just like I wrote there. Alright, so there's our interest rate. And then T stands for, usually we think of it as time. You could also perhaps think of it as term. So let's define term. Term is the length of time over which money is invested or borrowed. Now, when you put money in the bank in a savings account, there's no term, right? Not like they say, okay, you got to take your money out in 6 years. But there are some investments that are like that. You put money in and they say you can't touch that money for 6 years. If you take it out early, you get charged a penalty. With loans, there's a definite term length. So you might take out a loan and they'll say you need to pay this off in 3 years. So in that case, it's a term. You can also just think of it as time. If it's a savings account, for example, you're putting money in for the bank for an unspecified amount of time. Now here's the important thing. The time is always expressed in years. So again, up here, I'm going to put years in brackets just to remind us about that. Okay, a few more words we need to know. Maturity. Yeah, some of you, I should talk to you about this. No, it's okay. Maturity, when we're talking about money, is the contracted or agreed to end date of an investment. So again, this isn't always the case. When you use a savings account, it doesn't become to maturity, right? You just keep adding to it and taking out money sometimes. But as I said before, some investments and definitely loans have an end date where it needs to be paid up or where you get paid out. Per annum. Per annum is just a fancy way of saying per year. So you could, for example, see something like 4% / A, or it might say annum there, and that's the same as 4% per year. Future value. Okay, this is an important one. This formula, this I equals PRT, what it tells you is just the interest you earned or the interest you're paying. But it doesn't tell you how much money you now have in the bank. Like, let me give you an example. If you put $100 in the bank, so that's how much you put in the bank, and let's say you get 6% interest, which is pretty great. So at the end of the year, you've made $6. Is that how much money you now have in the bank? $6? No. You put 100 in, you got $6 interest, you now have $106. So this here is your principal. That's the P, right? That's how much you put in. This here is the interest. That's how much they're giving you for putting the money. This here is the future value. Believe it or not, future value is represented by the letter A. I think it's because it's also called the final amount. So future value is the value of an investment at the end of the year. This should say term. So there's a formula for that. If you think of it, how did I get A here? I just took the P and the I and added them together. So it's a pretty basic formula, but important. Now you can actually write it in a slightly more complicated way. So I'm going to write this formula again. I have A equals P plus, nothing's different so far, but look, instead of writing I, what could I write instead of I? How about PRT? Since that's what I is equal to, is PRT, I could also write it like this. And once you learn about factoring in grade 10, you can also factor out a P. But let's not worry about that. So this A right here, that's the future value. A stands for future value. It's also called the final amount. Okay, let's do some questions. All right, Marty invested $2,500 at 2.5% simple interest. It's paid annually with a term of 10 years. Find the interest accumulated and the future value of his investment at maturity. So there's two things to find here, interest and future value. I'm going to write this for probably every single one of the questions. I equals P, I'll put times R times T. Do we know the interest? No, that's what we're trying to figure out. Do we know the principal? Yeah, that's the amount of money that you put into the bank. Well, he invested $2,500, so that's our principal, $2,500. Times, do we know the rate? Yeah, it's 2.5. Should I put 2.5 here? No, if you do that, you just got it wrong. How come? Because remember, our 2.5% must be switched into a decimal. So I'm going to go 2.5. How do I switch it to a decimal? I know it has a decimal in it right now, but it's a percent. You want to get it out of percent form into decimal form. So you can either divide it by 100, or you could move that decimal 2 spots to the left, and whichever way you do it, you're going to get 0.025. That's the number that goes in here. Times. T is time, and time is 10 years, and it's in years, which is perfect. It needs to be in years. So I multiply that, and when I multiply those numbers together, I will get the interest. Equals $625. Okay, so that's how much interest was earned over the 10 years. Now, that was the first question. The second question was, what's the future value? So remember, future value is A. I know that's weird. It's like future amount, I guess, or final amount. That's where the A comes from. So A equals P plus I. Well, P is the principal. That's how much you put in the bank to start. That was the 2,500. And I is how much you earned. That's the 625. We add those together, you'll have the new and final amount that Marty now has in the bank. And you get 3,125. Okay, good. These questions will get hard as we go along. Sashka is a golf pro in Banff. She invested $1,400 for 36 weeks. She'll use the money for new golf clubs. Okay, good. The interest rate is 1.75% per annum. How much interest does Sashka earn? So again, we're going to use the formula, I equals PRT. Do we know interest? No, that's what we're trying to find. We have to find the interest. So we'll write down I, we're trying to find that. Principal, that's the amount that Sashka put in the bank. That's $1,400. Okay, now a couple difficult things here. R, that's the interest rate. Here's the interest rate. Do I write down 1.75? No. How come? I have to change it to a decimal. I've got to get it out of percent form. How do I do it? I move the decimal over 2 spots, or if that doesn't make sense to you, you don't like doing that, you can divide it by 100. And if you do that, you will get 0.0175. I guess I could write that. 0.0175. So that's our percent. Now, even trickier. We have to multiply that by the time, and the time is right here, 36 weeks. So do I go time 36? No. How come? Because that's in weeks. We want it to be in years. If you put 36 here, it means that she invested it for 36 years. She's going to make a lot of money. This is just 36 weeks. It's not very long. She's not going to make very much money. That's less than a year. In fact, how many weeks are there in a year? There's 52 weeks in a year. So, any idea? How do you figure out how much of a year 36 is? You think of it as a fraction. It's 36 weeks out of how many weeks in a year? 52. That's how you do it. So there's 52 weeks in a year. What if it didn't say weeks? What if it said days? Well, then it would be 36 out of how many days in a year? 365. So you'd go 36 divided by 365. There's 365 days in a year. We don't worry about leap years. Okay, the other possibility is if it said months, 36 months. So then we'd go 36 divided by how many months in a year? 12. And by the way, 36 divided by 12 equals 3. It would be 3 years, and that's perfect. So there's 12 months in a year. So make sure, if you don't know those things, make sure you write those down. It's important. All right, so we have to go 1,400 times 0.0175 times 36 and divide by 52. It doesn't matter when you do that division step. You can do it right at the start if you want. I'm just going to do it at the end. I'm going to multiply all the numbers on top, 1,400, 0.0175, multiplied by 36, then divide by 52, and I get the answer 16.961. So if we do the rounding here, it actually won't round up. So you'll just get $16.96. Okay, now we have 3 questions that are tricky because you're not going to be finding the interest. You have to find either the P, the R, or the T. So people often find this difficult. Stefan is saving to buy a used car. He needs $9,800 and he already has $9,475 saved. He plans to invest his savings at an annual rate of 1.59%. How long will it take for Stefan to have enough money? All right, so the first thing we need to do is figure out how much more does he need. He needs $9,800. But he already has $9,475. So if we want to know how much more money he needs to go from $9,475 up to $9,800, what do? We subtract. Grab your calculators if you need. You're going to get $325. So that's how much money he needs to earn. How does he want to earn it? Through interest. So that's actually the interest in this case. His interest is $325. That's what he wants to earn in interest. Do we know his principal? Yeah, we do. That's how much money he already has saved and he's going to put in the bank. He's already saved $9,475, right? That's the principal he's putting in, and he wants to earn this amount of interest, $325, to get him up to a final amount of $9,800. Okay, what else? Do we know R, the interest rate? Yeah, we do. It's 1.59% Or if we write as a decimal, divide it by 100 or move the decimal over 2 spots, you'll get 0.0159. And t, do we know the time? No, we don't. It says how long will it take for Stefan to have enough money, and it doesn't tell us what the t is. Okay, so what we need to do, we're going to go back to the first page here. We need to rearrange this formula right here, the I equals PRT. We need to rearrange it 3 more ways so that we isolate the P, we isolate the R, and we isolate the T. But let's say we wanted to get the P by itself. If you wanted to get the P by itself, you'd have to get rid of the R and the T. And what are the R and the T doing here? They're multiplying by the P. So what you're going to have to do is do the opposite of multiplying. You have to divide by RT. So you do the same to both sides. So you'd actually end up with P equals I and then divided by the R and the T. You'd still be multiplying those together, the R and T, but you'd be dividing the I by that amount. So that is how you're going to figure out the principal if you're given everything else. What if you're trying to figure out the R? Well, in that case, you'd need to divide both sides by the P and the T. So you'd end up with R equals I divided by P times T. That's the formula you use if you're trying to find R. And what if you're trying to find T? Well, in that case, you're going to have to divide both sides by PR. So you'd have I divided by PR, P times R if you want. So you actually have 4 formulas. They're all based on this one, but you end up with having these rearrangements of it if you're trying to find P or R or T. So in this case, the question we're doing right now, we are trying to find T. We don't know what T is. So we need this bottom formula right here. T equals I divided by PR. So I'll write that here. T equals I divided by P times R. So let's fill in what we know. We don't know T. We know I. It's $325. Divided by P is $9,475. Times R, we're going to use the 0.0159. Okay, now you can use your calculator, but be careful. If you have a basic calculator and you go 325 divided by this times this, it's not going to give you the right answer. You need to put this amount in brackets if you put it into your calculator in one go. The other thing you could do is just get that answer on the bottom. Go 9,475 times 0.0159, get that answer and write it down, and then go 325 divided by that. But I know most people don't want to do that. They want to do it all in one go in their calculator. So please put brackets in this bottom part or you're probably going to get it done. So I'm going to go 325 divided by bracket 9475 times 0.0159, close the bracket, and then hit equals. And I get 2.157. I'll round that to 2.16. 2.16 what? Well, it's T, which is time, and remember, time's always in years. Okay. Robin has $15,000, wow, to invest in a financial institution. Calculate the annual rate of interest if she plans to earn $3,500 at the end of 2 years. So this can get confusing what they're asking, so you might want to write down all the things they talk about here. Do we know the interest? She plans to earn $3,500. Yeah, we do know interest. It's $3,500. Do we know the principal? That's how much she put in the bank. Yeah, $15,000. So we've got that too. Do we know the interest rate? No, we're trying to find the rate of interest. We don't know it. You can put a question mark there if you want. And time. Do we know how long she's keeping in there? Yep, 2 years. So there's everything we know, and we want to figure out what R is. So what formula are we going to use? This one. R equals I divided by PT. R equals I divided by P times T. And we just plug into that. R equals 3,500 divided by 15,000 times 2 for T. I'm going to put that in brackets to make sure I do that first. I mean, I could even do this in my head. 15,000 times 2 is 30,000. So basically, I'm going to go 3,500 divided by 30,000. And I get 0.11666666. So basically, that's 117 if I round. Okay, now let's think about this. Does that mean 0.117%? No, it doesn't. Because remember, in this formula, look what we did always to our percent. It was 2.5 and we changed it to 0.025 to use the formula. It was 1.75% and we changed it to 0.0175 to use the formula. It was 1.59 and we changed it to 0.0159 to use the formula. So this is not the percent. This is the decimal. We got to go back to the percent now. How do we do that? This time we're going to move the decimal not 2 to the left but 2 to the right. Or if you want, this time we're not going to divide by 100 like we did here, divide by 100, divide by 100. We're going to multiply by 100. So in order to get it into percent form, you got to multiply it by 100 or move it 2 to the right. I get 11.7%. That's a very good percent. If you can get that kind of interest rate, invest there. Okay, last question. So let me set this up. Even before I read it, I can set this up. We're going to write down everything we know. What principal at 4.75%, well, that is the rate, isn't it? That's the R, so 4.75%. But wait a minute, we got to switch that into a decimal. So we divide it by 100 or move the decimal over 2 spots, and you'll get 0.0475. We'll earn interest of $27.50. Oh, that's the interest. The interest is $27.15. Did I say 50? 15. In 9 months. Oh, so the time is 9. Wait a minute. Isn't it always supposed to be in years? Yes, it is. So 9 months. How are we going to switch 9 months into years? How many months in a year? 12. So you have to divide this by 12. Okay, how do we do this? We got to figure out what P is. Remember the formula for just finding out P? You can look back on the previous page if you want, but it's I divided by R times T. So let's go through that. I is 27.15 divided by R is 0.0475 times T is 9 over 12. Okay, you have a choice now. If you want, you could divide this right now and find that 9 over 12 is 0.75. But sometimes it doesn't work out to be such a nice decimal. It goes on and on and on forever. So it's fine. You could put 9 over 12 right here. And then remember to put the bottom in brackets. So what you'd be putting into your calculator is 27.15 divided by bracket 0.0475 times 9 divided by 12, close the bracket, and hit equals. And it'll work. And what you'll get if you do that is $762.11. Okay, that's simple interest. Hope that makes sense, and take care. Bye.